Welcome back after the ad break, and let's quickly continue with tropical cyclones and how to identify them on synoptic charts. While we're doing this, let's quickly throw in everything while we're looking at the synoptic chart, what we've learned so far about tropical cyclones. Now, first of all, we've already established that tropical cyclones, hurricanes, typhoons, or willy wallies, we experience them late summer. Why do we experience them late summer? Because this is when the ocean temperature is at its warmest. Now, for the formation of this tropical cyclone, what do we know? It needs to be between 5 degrees and 20 degrees north and south of the equator. Why? Because this is where our tropical regions are found. Okay. And another reason for the formation, why it forms over there, because it needs this warm tropical ocean water. And what does it need to be? Above 27 degrees Celsius. Now, late summer, warm ocean waters, and like we've mentioned before, as you can see, on the east coast of continents. Why? Because they're usually washed by warm ocean currents. Now, what do we know? The system moves from the initial stage that develops just below 5 degrees north and south of the equator, and we know it moves in the tropical easterlies. Now, as you can see on our synoptic chart, we can see our tropical cyclone just situated off the east coast of southern Africa. Now, this tropical cyclone that we see over here is definitely in its mature stage and is definitely starting to recurve and move in the westerly wind belt to colder ocean waters. Now, the reason why I can tell you that this is in its mature stage, very importantly, have a look at the isobars. The isobars are very close together. So what do we know about the isobars very close together? Very strong and fierce winds. Now, unfortunately, our synoptic chart has not been printed a little bit bigger, but as you can see right there in the middle, we have the eye of the tropical cyclone. That's the symbol that we use to represent the eye. And most probably this tropical cyclone also had a name. Let's call it Helene. And what do we know with the name of a tropical cyclone? That Helene is the A, B, C, D, E, the fifth tropical cyclone for the season. So how many tropical cyclones have happened before Helene? 4 of them. How do we know that? Because we use the alphabetical order to determine how many tropical cyclones we experience during a season. Now, very importantly, as you can see, I've drawn the initial stage, how it moves. Now, this sector over here, the southwestern sector, will experience the worst weather because of the movement of the system. As the system moves, it pushes these isobars closer together, creating worse conditions. If we look at a satellite image, there you can see, now you can see the band of cloud cover, as you can see, going in a clockwise circulation, in a spiraling clockwise circulation, and very importantly, unfortunately we can't see it over here, the eye will be visible. Now, what do we know about the eye? Is where subsidence are taking place, sinking air. Remember the cross section? You got your 2 vortexes of cumulonimbus clouds. The air rises because of the warm, moist condition. What happens? It diverges over here, leaves a void over here, and this is where the eye is. Sinking air. So when we look at satellite images, you will be able to see a clear spot that represents the eye with spiraling clouds surround it, around the clean spot. Now, grade 12s, during the 2006-2017 year, we experienced massive hurricanes during the hurricane season, and South Africa itself experienced a tropical cyclone, the Neo. That happened late summer during February, March, and Hurricane Harvey and Hurricane Irma happened during September, October 2017. Now, after earthquakes, I can really rate tropical cyclones as probably one of the biggest natural disasters that one can face. There is dire consequences regarding these tropical storms, and unfortunately, we can't stop them. It's a natural storm that happens each and every single year, but in today's day and age, we have the technology to basically predict them. But you need to keep in mind that unfortunately we live in a world where some countries are developed and some countries are developing. Meaning that some countries are economically much stronger to prepare themselves for a disaster like this, and where other countries don't have the resources and intel and precautionary measures to prevent a natural disaster. It's already a natural disaster, but just to minimize it. Now, a great example I can give you, Hurricane Harvey that hit America, Houston, Texas. The death toll wasn't high, but obviously astronomical consequences regarding damage and infrastructure. It cost America billions when the storm took place. And that same storm has hit Costa Rica and the islands, American islands, on its way to Houston. And unfortunately, many of these countries are developing countries. Now, for a country to grow economically after a storm like this is incredibly difficult. First of all, you need to keep in mind, they don't have the necessary resources. We're talking about hospitals, healthcare facilities, shelters. Most of these people do not use proper building materials to build their houses, let alone have the necessary plans to evacuate, where America do. Now, when we look at those storms and how it affects us as human beings, we need to go and have a look at the economical, social, and environmental consequences. Very importantly, once we look at it, we need to take precaution. Precaution is, like I've mentioned, we can't stop a storm, it's going to happen. But we can save lives by taking certain precautionary measures. Now, believe it or not, you've heard about GIS. That's in our MapWork syllabus. We can use remote sensing. We can use satellite images to predict when the storm is going to take place or when the storm is going to make landfall. And what can we as people do? What can the government do? They can start with evacuation plans. Get the people away from the areas that's going to be impacted by the storm. For instance, organize shelters where people are going to be safe. Organize food parcels for the people. Organize hospital care for the people that may need it. And organize rescue services that may be needed afterwards. Now, it's a great problem for developing countries as well. The simple reason why is it's the aftermath of a tropical cyclone or hurricane. Because what happens usually after the storm, you need to keep in mind, great souls, this is a really intense storm. We're talking about winds blowing 180, 220 kilometers per hour. Lots of rainfall over a very short period of time. Now, not just because of the damage that the rain caused because of flooding, what happens? Waterborne diseases start to break out because all the sewage systems are flooded. After the storm, sanitation won't be up and running properly. There probably won't be clean drinking water. So this causes a concern in disease. And the problem that we face in today's day and age, that many countries are not well developed to deal with the consequences, aftermath of a tropical cyclone. Because the diseases breaks out, sickness like cholera breaks out, and a lot of people fell ill and may die as well. Now, what can one do to take the necessary steps just to make sure you're safe? Early warning systems, like I've mentioned, use satellite images, remote sensing, provide good shelter to the people. Now, obviously, always listen to news updates, radio, to make sure that we know what's going to happen, when it's going to make landfall, and when is it safe to leave your shelter. This is the measures that we need to take to make sure that we can save lives instead of losing lives. Now, the economic impact of a tropical storm like this is huge, it's massive. You need to keep in mind, a lot of precipitation takes place over a very short period of time. With winds blowing up to 200 kilometers per hour, just imagine the damage what it causes to buildings, to infrastructure, to houses. And most importantly, keep in mind, when a storm like this magnitude takes place, no one can go to work. So obviously there's no income being generated and there's damage being created by the storm. Now, if we look at the social impact regarding mid-latitude cyclones, tropical cyclones. Tropical cyclones is loss of life. Now keep in mind, some countries unfortunately can't do the necessary evacuation measures, precautionary measures, and people do die because of the flooding, because of buildings, because of the shelters are not safe enough, because of the strong winds, because of the conditions that's been created by this tropical cyclone. And obviously services will be disrupted. Schools won't be open, hospitals are probably going to be overfull, and a lot of traffic congestion because of trees that fall over, roads being damaged, etc. Environmental impact, lots of vegetation will be destroyed, and obviously soil erosion because of the flooding that took place is definitely going to be a concern. Now, just to end this lesson off, I want to have a look. I want to compare mid-latitude cyclones to tropical cyclones. Now, very importantly that we need to remember, great task, mid-latitude cyclones, as the name indicates, both are low-pressure systems because a cyclone is a low-pressure system. With mid-latitude cyclones, will it be established? Mid-latitude cyclones, is it because of warm conditions or is it because the air is being forced to rise? It's because the air is being forced to rise. Two components of a mid-latitude cyclone. It consists of a cold front and a warm front. And what does this cold front do? It catches up with the warm front and forces it to rise. A tropical cyclone, it's a low pressure system because it's a cyclone. Tropical means warm, humid conditions. So what do we know? It's rising air because of warm conditions. The air is not being forced to rise. And there's no fronts in tropical cyclones, just upper air movement of warm air. Now obviously, if you just quickly look through the list over there, different names for mid-latitude cyclones is frontal depressions and temperate cyclones. What do we call tropical cyclones? Americans call them hurricanes, Australia, willy willies. Japanese calls them typhoons. So different names. Where do they form? The mid-latitudes, between 40 and 60 degrees north and south of the equator. Where do tropical cyclones form? From 5 degrees up into 30 degrees north and south of the equator. Very importantly there, grade 12s, it can't form at the equator because there's not enough what? Coriolis force. Okay. We looked at mid-latitude cyclones. How does it move? It moves from west to east. Okay, in the westerly wind belt. Now, how does the tropical cyclone move? It moves the initial stage, moves in the easterlies, then it recurves and moves away in the westerly wind belt. Now, when do we experience mid-latitude cyclones? All year round. but we're only experiencing them during winter because we don't experience them in summer because the South Atlantic high pressure blocks them out. When do we experience tropical cyclones? Late summer. What's the reason for that? We discussed it a couple of minutes ago because of that ocean temperatures that needs to be over 27 degrees Celsius, and the simple reason is because the ocean temperatures is going to be warmest late summer because it heats up right throughout the summer, and it's going to be the warmest temperature late summer, early autumn. Now, just features, I've mentioned it already with the mid-latitude cyclones, distinct features. Cold front, warm front. Keep in mind, we only experience the cold front conditions in South Africa. Now, if you look at the tropical cyclones, it's got two massive clouds and an eye in the middle. Columns of clouds. Remember this, there's the first column, we refer to it as vortex 1. Then we got that clear conditions in the middle where sinking air is the eye, and vortex 2, cumulonimbus clouds. Now, if you look at the mid-latitude cyclones, the weather associated with it, obviously low temperatures because it's cold air approaching. It forces the warm air to rise. It cool, condense clouds, bring much needed rain to the Western Cape province of Southern Africa. Now, if you quickly look at the tropical cyclone, very intense, very strong winds blowing, a lot of precipitation over a very short period of time. This is actually the nasty one, and intense thunderstorm activity. Areas affected, we looked at it, as I said, the western side of continents and mid-latitude cyclones. In South Africa's case, obviously moving from west to east. And if you look at tropical cyclones, mainly affect the east coast of continents. Simple reason is because most of the countries are being washed by warm ocean currents on the east coast, and it needs that warm ocean temperatures for the formation of it. Thank you for watching. See you next time.